We learned yesterday in the Torah portion called Baalotcha about the commandment that God told Moses to pass on to Aaron and light the candles. Then after that, there's a whole section that we're going to skip over for right now, and that is the inauguration of the Levites. And they're we just had the inauguration of the temple, the tabernacle, and the altar, and the menorah. And now we had all the Levites, and all the Levites were taken, and it was reasserted that they will be now serving in the temple in place of the firstborn. They had to bring certain sacrifices, and this was done with great alacrity and wickedness. Okay, now let's go to this part that I want to learn today. And it talks about we have what's called Pesach Sheni, second Passover, Passover number 2. Consolation Passover. What does it mean? First of all, Pesach, Passover, is the most important holiday in Judaism. It's the basis of Judaism. It's the birth of the Jewish people. God showed the Jewish people, chose them, took them out of Egypt, gave them his Torah. And we're always remembering in all of our prayers how God took us out of Egypt. God took us out of Egypt. This is especially important because God is not just telling us that he did something one time. He took us out, and now we're on our own. First of all, this is the first of the 10 commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. It's a Jewish identity telling that the Jewish people from all the nations in the world, God chose the Jews. Somebody wrote to me a few days ago, what about, if there's extraterrestrial beings, what about Mars and all these other places? It doesn't make any difference. Even if there are people on Mars or on the planet Zork or Krypton or whatever, God, and it could be they're smarter than us and they're bigger than us and they're whatever it is, more developed than us, but God chose the Jewish people. And the fact that he chose the Jewish people, he's got the whole universe. God creates the whole universe, so he could create anybody he wants. And he chose the Jewish people. It's not that he just chose the people on this world. From all of the creation, that's what it says in the fourth of the 10 commandments. God, in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth. Heavens means all the spiritual levels, all these other planets and things like that. Okay, so God chose. So this is a very basic thing of Judaism, that God chose the Jews and he took them out of Egypt. Why did he choose them? He just chose, it's not because he chose them because they're smarter or that they're braver or they're more brave, they're honest or anything like that. Certainly not. He chose them because those things could be true, but they're not, they're inconsequential. The main thing is God chose the Jews, even if they're the stupidest and most, decadent, whatever nation in the world, God chose them. Nothing they can do will make God change his mind. So, even though it does say in the Torah that the Jews are Am Chacham and Avon, they're wise people, and that's why God gave them the Torah, because it's a book, and it's a nation, the people of the book. Okay, but this whole business centers around Passover. Passover, God began this whole amazing thing. He put them in trouble. Also, God let them know why there's such thing as trouble. So he took them out of Egypt. And okay, what happens if a person, now also, one more thing. There's only 2 positive commandments that if you don't do them, there's a punishment of what's called, exorcism, not exorcism, getting cut off from God, koret. And that is if a father does not circumcise his children, or if a person refuses to circumcise himself, then there's a punishment, which you can always a person only gets punished the last moment of his life because he can always fix it up. So it's possible for him to, so he didn't circumcise himself when he's 50, he can do it when he's 60, when he's 90, when he's 100. But the second before he dies, so it says he gets cut off, the soul gets cut off. The other one is purposely not doing the Pesach offering. Purposely not bringing the Pesach offering, the punishment is very severe. It's like it's the same punishment as the not keeping Yom Kippur or something like that. It's a very severe punishment, getting cut off, because Passover is the covenant between Jews and God, a two-way covenant. God says he's promising he's going to do miracles for the Jews, and the Jews say that we promise we'll leave all of Egypt, we'll throw ourselves on you, we'll be your people, and God says, I'll be your God. Okay, but what happens if a person doesn't make the Passover? What happens if he doesn't make it? So if he doesn't do it on purpose, he's in big trouble. He's in big trouble. Like we said before, the punishment is getting cut off from God. But what if a person is, extenuating circumstances? He's sick, he's far away, he's in prison, whatever, he can't. This is for people like that. They have what's called second Passover, make-up Passover, not make-up, what do you call it? Consolation. You make up the test, rain check, Passover. So we're going to learn about that now. Let's go. God spoke to Moses. All right, this is the third. We're skipping the second reading. The first we talked about the menorah. The second, that's number one. The second reading, second person that gets called up, they read to him. Here it happens to be, they read them the story about the Levites, how they sanctified the Levites. The third one, excuse me, that was not me, that was the, okay. The third one, this is the third people get called up, for the third person to get called up for the reading, number Shlishi, 3, is the story about the second Passover, right? The make-up Passover. Here we go. God spoke to Moses in Midbar Sinai, and we'll do some of the commentaries in a moment. Sheni, in the second year, let's say some Israel going out of the land of Egypt. And when did they leave Egypt? They left on the 15th day of Nisan, which Nisan is the first month in the Jewish calendar, the first month of the Jewish calendar, Nisan. So 1 year after, and the second year, and this is the first year they left Egypt was on the 15th day of Nisan, right? So the whole year is going past, and now we have the first month. They come back to the first month again. So this was like 1 month, 2 weeks after the tabernacle was set up. The tabernacle was set up on the first day of the month. First day of the month, of the first month. The first day of the first month, right? 1 year after the second year after they left Egypt. So in other words, just 2 weeks short of the first full year. Right? So of the first full year. So now they're in the first month. In other words, they're going now into the second year. They're going into the second year because they left Egypt in the middle of the first month. Now it's the beginning of the first month. And God says to them, okay, the Jewish people should do the Passover in its proper time. In other words, this is the first day of the month, right? What does it say? It doesn't say when. It says on the first month, the Jewish people are supposed to do the Passover. First time. They left Egypt. They all took blood to put it on their doors and things like this. Now they left. Now they've been camping 1 year, almost, around Mount Sinai. And God says, do the Passover again. Do it again. And the Jewish people did the Passover in its proper time. They did it. So this is the 15th day of the month now. They sacrificed it. They eat it on the 15th, but they sacrificed the Paschal lamb on the 14th day of this month. Bein Arbaim, just right before it became the 15th of the month. It was done in its proper time with all of its laws and that they should be made. And God said to the Jewish people to do Moses, God told Moses, now Moses is telling the Jewish people, make the Passover. And the Jewish people did it. They made it, the Passover, Barishon, first month, Ba'arba Asar Yom, on the 14th day of the month, Bein Arbaim, just becoming the 15th day of the month, just like God commanded, so the Jewish people did. Good. Okay, now we finished it. They did the Passover. We'll learn a few things about this. We're going to learn that this is the only time the Jewish will. It was supposed to be that the Jewish people were supposed to camp around Mount Sinai for a little more than a year. And from there, they were supposed to go directly into the land of Israel. So that's what it was supposed to be, that they made the first Passover before they left Egypt. The second Passover, they made a year later. That's here. And shortly thereafter, we're going to see the Jewish people were supposed to travel to Israel. But what happened? The Jewish people said, listen, Moses, send some spies in so at least we'll get a little idea of how to approach this conquering of the land of Israel. So Moses says, sounds good. And he asked God what to do, and God said, listen, if you want to do it, but I'm not telling you to do it. You can do it. It's up to you. And Moses did it, and it was a tragedy. They came back. Moses never dreamed it would happen. But the spies came back, and they said, we're not going to go into the land of Israel. It's too formidable. And because of that, they had to wander in the desert for 38 more years, 39. They had to wander around in the desert. They were supposed to have gone in 1 year after they left Egypt, a little bit more than a year. They were supposed to go. But because they refused to go in the land of Israel. They refused. So now they had to wander around in the desert. All that time, they were wandering around in the desert. They didn't do another Pesach offering. They didn't celebrate Passover. For the whole entire time they were wandering around in the desert, they never did Passover. So we'll see in a moment that the reason they didn't do it was because the fact is they weren't supposed to do it. They were supposed to have done Passover in Egypt, then one more Passover before they started traveling, and then the next Passover was supposed to be in the land of Israel. There was no plans to make more Passovers wandering around in the desert. But there was also another reason. All the time that they were wandering around in the desert, there was something wrong with the weather that caused it that if a person would circumcise himself, it wouldn't heal. It says that there was no whatever's east wind or something, it wouldn't. In any case, they couldn't circumcise themselves all the time they were in the desert. Right before they came into the land of Israel, they all circumcised themselves. Right before. Who circumcised themselves? All the children that were born in the desert. In the 40 years they were wandering around in the desert, all the children that were born in that time and were not circumcised. The law is an uncircumcised person cannot eat from the Pesach offering. So therefore, the whole 40 years actually that they were wandering in the desert, they were only wandering, let's say 38 years, wandering around in the desert for 38 years, there were two reasons why they didn't do the Pesach offering. One of them was because there was no plan to make it. They were supposed to have done it immediately, but there was no provision for this wandering around because that only came because of the sin. And also when they were wandering around, it was impossible to circumcise them. They couldn't because the circumcision didn't heal. However it is, they didn't make it. Okay. Interesting. We're going to learn that in a moment. But back to our subject. There were some people that they were impure. Who are these people? We'll see. And they couldn't make the Passover in the first time. And everyone was making it, and they felt very bad. So they came to Moses and Aaron, and they said, By Yomer Anashim, and these people said, Anachto Tameim Lenefesh Adam. We are impure. Right? We are impure. They buried dead people. We'll see what they did. In any case, whatever it was, they were impure. They had touched dead bodies. They were this. And therefore, a person who's impure can't make the Passover offering. Lama Nigra, why should we be any worse that we can't do this all-important sacrifice in its proper time among the Jews? So Moses said, Imdu veshma mayitzaveshem. Stand here and just wait for a second, and let's see what God commands you. And God said like this, Taber ben Israel, and say, Ish ish ki yiteh tameh lenefesh. A person that he is impure. For some reason, he touched a dead body, he was in the room with a dead body. Or he was far away. He was too far away. and he couldn't make the Passover for Hashem. So what do we say? So he couldn't make it on the first month in Nisan, but Chodesh Sheni, make it the next month. Make it the next month after 1 month later, exactly 1 month later, he can do the Passover on Matzot Amorim Yechlu. He can eat it with matzahs and more. Now, the second Passover is not as severe as the first Passover. The second Passover, you're allowed to make and to have bread in your house as well. And have bread. You just have to have matzah. You don't have to get rid of it. So you make the second Passover. There's a second Passover that's only for people that did not make the first Passover. And there's all sorts of other stipulations. Also, if the majority of the Jewish people are impure, then they don't make a second Passover. They make it on the first Passover. Okay. Don't leave anything until the morning. Don't break any bones in it. Just like the laws of the regular Pesach, you should do it. And a person who is not impure, a person that's pure, right? He is not impure, and he wasn't far away, but he just decided not to make the Passover. He will get cut off from his people because he didn't sacrifice the sacrifice of God in its proper time, and he did it on purpose. That person will bear his own sin. What if there is a convert? A convert, he also should make the Passover like it should be. He didn't go out of Egypt with you, but anybody who becomes a convert is considered to be part of the Jewish people, even if he was not among those that left Egypt. So we're talking here about the second Passover they did, because all the other years they didn't make it. But when they came into Israel, they resumed making the Pesach offering again. He says, listen, what happens, let's say a person converts, right, a non-Jew. He converts to Judaism a week before Passover. Well, so he's a Jew, he's 100% a Jew. So you might think that he should make a Pesach offering immediately. It says, Talmud Chuka Achas. This is what it means. Yaguritchem gir ubo eit lasot Pesach. If a non-Jew converts, then it says that he has to sprinkle on himself the ashes of the paraduma, of the red cow, and then he can do it. You might think that if a person converts, no matter when he does it in the year, that he should bring a Pesach offering, right? He missed it, so he can do Passover in the middle of the winter and whenever he wants to. He says, no, he has to wait for everybody else, etc. He has to do a Korban Pesach, and also he has to purify himself before he can make the Passover. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to where we were. All right. God spoke to Moses in Midbar Sinai on the second year they left Egypt, and the first month. Right. I don't expect you to remember this, but if you do remember, how did this week's Torah reading begin? With Ba'alotcha. Right, what does it say here? Look, it says, excuse me. Sorry, 1 minute. No, I'm sorry, it's not here. We're talking about last week. Last week, we said that if you remember, how did this book begin? The book of of Numbers. How did it begin? It began 1 month after this. Right here, look, let's have a look. Here, excuse me, here. Here. Okay, remember how this book began? It began, God spoke to Moses on when? The second year and the second month. That's how this book of Deuteronomy begins. Here, if you don't believe me, here, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Let's have a look over here. I don't know if this might be a mistake. Let's try to do this. Here, look, how does it start off? The book of Bamidbar, right? I don't know if you see this. Yeah, here. God spoke to Moses in Midbar Sinai when? Be'echad l'chodesh Sheni, on the first day of the second month, the month of Iyar, and the second year when they left Egypt. So in other words, on the second year, here also in our Torah portion, it's talking about the second year, but in our Torah portion, it's saying that God spoke, is a message that God gave to Moses on the first month of the second year. And the whole book starts off on the second month. So here on our portion, it's talking about what happened in the first month. And early it talks about what happened in the second month. So if so, there's no order. There's not a chronological order. The book of Numbers begins on the second year after the Jews left Egypt, on the second month. And here in our Torah portion, it's talking about what happened on the first month. Here, let's go back and see. Let's see if we can get this. 1 second. Oh, here. Here we go. Here, see? There. On the second year of going out of Egypt, on the first month. So this comes after. This is already 2 Torah portions after. Here it talks about something that happened 1 month before what we spoke about 2 weeks ago. The beginning of the book starts after what's over here. So it says from here we learn Parsha Shebarosh Sefer, in the beginning of the book, it was only said in the month of Iyar. This comes to tell you, Ein Seder Mukdam U'Mu'achar b'Torah. It comes to tell you that there's no order of before and after in the Torah. If so, why didn't the Torah really begin with this? Why does this book of Numbers begin with something that happened 1 month after this? Why didn't simply start off with this? That's the first month, and then talk about what happened in the beginning of this week of this book. Talk about that later, so it'll be in chronological order. Here it wants to tell you that this is saying a bad thing about the Jews. The Torah didn't want to start off with a bad thing about the Jews. What's the bad thing? That the whole 40 years that the Jewish people were in the desert, more exactly the 39 years, because they were wandering around, Lo ikribu el Pesach, they only sacrificed this Paschal offering alone. All right. Basically, what it says over here are things that I just told you before. The Ramban has the beautiful explanation about it. But these are things that I told you. What really was the reason why it didn't do it in the proper order and what was so bad about the Jews? Good. Let's skip over to here one moment. Pesach Sheni. In Chabad, they learn a very deep message about this, and that is Pesach Sheni, that it's never too late. If you didn't do something at its proper time, it's never too late to make it up, especially if it's a matter of doing tshuva. If it's a matter of repenting. A person can't say, listen, I'm too old, I can never come back close to God. No, it's never too late. Let's just do a little bit of this and then take a bit of a rest. There were people that were impure, lenefesh adam, and they couldn't make the first Passover. They came in front of Moses, in front of Aaron on that day and said, what are we going to do? What should we do? He says, what does it mean they came to Moses and Aaron? And both of them were sitting in the place of learning. They came and they asked them. It can't be that they asked one after the other, Moses and then Aaron, because if Moses didn't know, then Aaron certainly wouldn't know. So they asked them together. It says, Balaturin, there were people that were impure. What were they impure from? It says, Elu shoyin nosim Aaron shel Yosef. They were carrying the coffin of Yosef. Remember, Yosef died in Egypt, and the Jewish people were carrying him out. Yosef said, Hashbeah, Hishbeah, he promised them that he would bury him in Israel. So they were they were the ones that were impure. In Chabad, they also say a thing that says, oh no, here we'll see. The rabbis of Chabad explain. These people said, we are tam tamei lenefesh adam. We were impure. Lama nigra. Why should we be any less than anybody else? It's not our fault. Omer lahem en kadoshim krevim betuma. Moses said, I'm sorry, but you can't sacrifice sacrifices if you're impure. They said, okay, listen, so you know what? At least let the blood of the sacrifices be thrown for us and by pure Kohanim. And then they can give the meat to eat. We'll eat the meat in impure state. They said, just 1 second. Moses said, you got a good idea. 1 second, let me see what to do. It says, this is like a pupil. Moses to God was like a pupil that for sure he would hear from his rabbi. Happy is a human being that so he is promised. And it was Moses was like so in good with God that he could get an answer whenever he wanted to. anytime that Moses wanted, he could speak to the Shekhinah, to God's presence. So therefore, it should have said Moses. This should have been said to Moses alone. But what? These people, they had the merit to have it said on them. And what happened? Why didn't Moses say this law? Why did he have to wait for this unusual situation that people became impure? This should have been what God didn't foresee, that there were going to be people like that. And if he didn't foresee it, then how can this become a law in the Torah? So this is because these people had merit, and God wanted to hold off and give them the merit. So therefore, purposely, he did not reveal this law to Moses until these people came. And this is something similar. There were people in New York that came and they were making lectures to Jews, not religious Jews. And they were saying that a Jew that doesn't do the commandments, he's got a lower profile. He's only a 20% Jew and a 50% Jew. He does this, he does. So the Rebbe said to them, you should know that the fact is that the lowest Jew you could possibly have, that you're much worse than they are. In fact, you're much worse than these lecturers. The lecturers, you're much worse than they are. And what's the proof? The only way that you can be fixed up, God wants you to fix yourself, is by talking to these people and convincing them to return to Judaism. In that merit, that'll save you. So God purposely kept these people from doing Torah and commandments so that you would be able to come and bring them back to Judaism. And now you're saying that you're better than them, that they're only 20% and you're 50%, exactly the opposite. So it's the same thing here. God purposely kept these people, right? Purposely kept this law away from Moses so that when these people came, right, they would wonder about what the law is, and the law would be given to them to give them the merit that this law should be said through them. Said, why should we be any less than everybody else? So therefore, God said to Moses, Moses said, just 1 minute, let me go and talk to God and see what God has to say. And the answer we just had, the people that were impure from no fault of their own, or they were distant from no fault of their own, as they could make the second Passover. And the Rebbe in Chabad, he said that maybe that was the Passover back then in the Holy Temple, but nowadays, it's even if Rechoka Lochem, even if a person purposely is far away from God, he can still make the second Passover. In other words, what does it mean? That it's never too late for him to come and be close to God. Okay, that's basically the story of the Pesach Sheni. We'll do a little more explanation, but I want to do one of the Pirkei Avot. So we'll skip to Pirkei Avot. Now we learned the commandment of what's called Pesach Sheni, the second consolation Passover for people that were, through no fault of their own, unable to make the first Passover.